I don't even know what year that would be, but okay. But the point is the same. All right. Norway and Sweden, again, two countries that actually were one political unit before 1900 that have very similar political, demographic, and economic institutions, or at least variables, pretty much track each other, irrespective of Norway's discovery of oil in the early 1970s. Finally, when we look at the major mineral producer, Chile, and we track it with Argentina, another paired comparison because of their geographic continuity, the fact that they have similar colonial institutions, the fact that they have similar demographic and ethnic compositions. You see similar political developments. If anything, Chile is more democratic over time than its resource-deprived match comparison, Argentina. Okay, actually before we get to that. In a nutshell, comparing the series of the major resource exporters with their match control cases that are very similar to them on the eve of either oil or mineral exports, we don't have at least any first cut evidence, looking at the series over time, that oil protracted democratization or delayed it or affected it in any which way. Again, though, not to jump to any conclusions, we subject this data to a more formal statistical analysis. We do something pretty simple. We take a page out of the medical sciences, and we look at a simple difference in means test between the democratic experience of the oil or mineral producer and compare it to the democratic experience to that of the counterfactual without oil or minerals after the discovery of oil or minerals. We subject these regressions to a lot of robustness checks to make sure that there's no confoundedness here, to make sure that there's no unobserved factors that maybe drive the oil or mineral exporters to maybe speed up the discovery of oil or minerals or to export them at any one period in time. We do that by controlling for country fixed effects and by controlling for unobserved time trends. After doing that, after controlling for this unobserved heterogeneity, as they call it in the jargon of statistics, we cannot find any evidence that the democratization experience of the resource or mineral, the oil or mineral exporter was any different systematically than that of its matched counterpart, of the control case. In other words, there is no treatment effect of resources on regime time, at least not when you conduct this exercise. If you're still skeptical, you may say, maybe these are 6 countries. They're not only 6 countries, they're not in the Middle East. And to be honest, the case study literature and even the statistical cross-sectional large N literature has the Middle East in mind. So, being careful social scientists and having a huge actual fleet of undergraduate RAs that are very competent at our disposal, we had them go back and look at 20 Middle Eastern countries going back to 1960. And we look at their reliance, their fiscal reliance on oil revenue, again as a percentage of total government revenues, from 1960 to the present. And we're looking here, if this isn't intelligible just on the face of it, we're looking here at the within-country variation. Again, the variation over time. Does increased fiscal reliance on oil revenues in the Middle East and North African sample that we have here of 20 countries have any impact whatsoever on its regime type, again measured as the polity score?
Which countries are these?
I can't name all of them. I can try.
Is Saudi Arabia?
Saudi Arabia is in there. Any country we have polity data for, any country that's been coded from 1960 on, I think it's every country in that region. I can't think of it.
It looks like it's the MENA countries, so like North Africa and all that, not Pakistan.
Well, we don't produce them.
Well, right.
Which explains Pakistan's lack of democracy, you see. So in this literature, any result is consistent, can be argued to be consistent.
Because we have that.
Well, actually, Steve, you'll get into that. The fuel exports takes natural gas. It captures that. When you get into the world one, you can. Yeah, so not actually here, I don't believe, in terms of the contribute. I can't give you the answer right now. It could be or it may not. I'm not sure if we actually look at the contribution to the state treasury that natural gas has in the Middle East. I don't think we do.
No.
No.
It's just picking up
Oil.
oil. Because the natural gas component is small in the Middle East.
Right.
I mean, the internationalization
I
of
didn't
natural
mean to
gas is,
derail.
yeah.
this is a good
Internationalization of
question.
natural gas is actually a very recent phenomenon.
Okay. So we do actually pick it up later when Steve gets into the regressions on the whole world, on the data analysis of the entire world. But for now, I think we relegate it to oil revenues. The point is, though, again, being very careful about the lag structure, because these are longitudinal data sets about time series tracked historically, we have to be very careful of the timing we impose between increased reliance on oil revenues and then a subsequent change in democratization. We don't find any evidence. Again, we experiment with different lag structures saying, oh, well, maybe the effect is delayed 5 years, 10 years, 7 years, 8 years, whatever. Doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter how we measure it.
Doesn't matter how we measure it. That's
What the it is, right? Because it varies. First, we look at oil as a percent of total government revenues. Then we look at windfall profits from oil per capita.
Right.
Then we look at windfall profits from oil as a percent of GNP. And however we measure it, let's see the long-run propensity score, 5 lags. Okay, you would want, see the numbers in parentheses underneath? You'd want that number to be about 2 in order for this to be statistically significant. It never approaches 2. It says the regression results we come up with cannot be argued to be different from 0. They're
Exactly.
not statistically significant.
And if anything, I think those are, for the most part, they're positive coefficients on the LRP, on the long-run propensity score. So we can't say with statistical significance that that positive result that we adduce in these tables is actually significant, is actually, is not due to chance, let's say.
But we do get the wrong sign, right? If the resource curse is right, you would see a
Negative
negative
sign,
in
not
front
a-
of those long-run propensity scores.
That's a good point.
Increase in oil, as measured in these different ways, would be associated with a decline
Exactly.
in democracy. To the degree we pick up anything, it's associated with an increase
Right.
in democracy.
Right.
But it's not statistically significant. There doesn't seem to be a relationship between these.
Do you want me to explain windfall profits, or do you want to get
No, I
into
think let's not get into
All
it.
right.
Can we go back to the definition of democracy then
Yeah.
that you were using for the utilities?
Sure.
For the score up there?
Mhm.
What does it entail again?
The definition, okay. It's an index. It's both multidimensional and a sliding scale. So what is it composed of? It's composed of the degree of constraints on the executive. Another way to say that is the veto points that really put fetters on the executive discretion and power. It's also composed of a measure of the degree of competitiveness for that position of the chief executive. How competitive is the recruitment process? How competitive is the, let's say, selection of that chief executive? It also captures the degree of political participation in society by individuals, by let's say, civil society. It also captures the degree of political participation, how competitive the process is between political parties, organized political parties. In other words, it's a multidimensional measure composed of several.
And one of the points we want to stress is that this measure may be perfect or imperfect, but we didn't make it up,
Yeah.
right?
We have no hand in
So
it.
one of the things you want to do in social science, right, is that if you're making an argument that A causes B or doesn't cause B, you don't want to be the person responsible for creating this democracy measure, because it's like, well, you just created a democracy measure that worked for you.
Right.
So we took the standard measure political scientists use.
Developed before I was born, maybe? I don't even know. Could be.
Could be. It's been around for a while, since the 70s.
Okay.
So, not before I was born, but certainly before you were born. I actually lived through disco.
Also, though, that's a good question because that segues into, Steve's going to pick it up now. Maybe you doubt the validity of the measure that we use for resource dependence, which is the actual proportion of revenue from resources a government has as a share of its total government revenues. Steve actually is going to show you right now that it really doesn't matter what measure we use or what measure is used, and he'll take it over.
Okay. So I know you guys, I can sort of see a lot of questions developing already, and I assume that these are questions for the end, unless you want to put them down. Okay. So I know we have about half an hour left, and I'm going to try to do the next section of this quickly so we can wrap up and have time for discussion.